So, Madeline, fantastic to be sitting down with you to talk about vendor management. And it's such a big part of what you do and what makes a campaign successful.
Yep.
So, maybe to start with, what's your overall view or thinking around vendor management?
Okay, so basically a vendor has entrusted us with the sale of what's often their biggest asset. So vendor management includes communication, managing expectations, meeting their expectations, frequency around feedback. So just basically at the end of the day, I always have in my mind that I want a vendor to think that their property is the only property I'm selling at any one time. Even though I might be running 5 or 6 campaigns at any one time, I want them to feel that their home and their sale and them as a client is my focus. Has
priority well
absolutely.
And truly. Great.
Yeah.
So on the frequency side, I mean, basically if we look at Marshall White, there are 2 main methods of sale. Auction, which quite often is the preferred method, and then there is the private treaty.
Sale. Yep.
What level of frequency do you think is appropriate in an auction campaign?
Daily. Mm-hmm. We'll leave a vendor alone on a Sunday.
Yeah, okay.
Unless of course there's something to tell them, or if there's a sale progressing over the Sunday. But we'll set that up at the start of the campaign. So I'll explain to my client. We'll have contact daily. I might leave you alone, possibly on a Friday because there may be nothing to discuss. Leave you alone on a Sunday unless there is something to discuss, but every other day of the week they're getting an update. Generally it's a phone call. We also have vendor meetings during the campaign, which is face-to-face, and really, really important to have that face-to-face contact.
In the office?
Preferably in the office,
yeah.
So we have a pre-campaign meeting which is a couple of days before they're first open for inspection, which runs through how the campaign will unfold. We then, depending on how we anticipate the campaign may start, we may have what we call a day 4, which is the meeting in the first week of the campaign after the first open. Often we'll have that meeting set up, and if we feel that we've started well and we've met our KPIs and expectations, we'll say to the vendor, we're probably okay not to meet this week. Mid-campaign meeting, which is obviously the middle of the campaign, is a not negotiable, and preferably face-to-face. There's going to be some instance where the vendor's overseas or interstate where you can't.
But you could do a Skype call.
Could do a Skype call, yeah, sometimes it's a conference call, but it's very hard to get that engagement, that rapport, the reaction, reading body language and that sort of thing over the phone. So preferably face-to-face where you can. And obviously in the last week of the campaign we have what we call our pre-auction meeting. So we set them all up in advance. So the admin ladies, when they're setting the campaign up, they will have those discussions with the vendor about the meeting expectations. It's important for the admin girls to set them up, because quite often if a salesperson, if I try to set them up, the vendor might say to me, oh no, we don't need to meet. So if Ellie sets them up, they just think that's normal. Every campaign has a meeting every week.
Great, so, delegated, it's scheduled,
that's right.
All of that.
Yep.
And easy for them to say, and here's the address of our office.
Yeah, that's right.
For them to come in for the meeting. Okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
Pre-campaign meetings often at the house, because it gives them an opportunity to show us any sort of workings of the house, or how the air conditioning works, or how the ducted heating works, or the alarm and that sort of thing. And
which could be good
quite
for
nice,
the open home side of things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Making sure we're in tune with the home and how it works.
Yeah.
So that's generally at the home.
Yeah,
but the other meetings in the office, definitely. Yeah.
The other thing that I know you've spoken with me about is demonstrating progress in there.
Definitely.
So you're not calling to have a chat, you're calling to give them updates and
that's right.
and what's happening from a progress point of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would be an example of either an upgrade in strategy or changing something that would be to them demonstrating that you're working in their best interest? Yeah,
so we're big believers in not set and forget. So I think a lot of agents make the mistake of setting a campaign up at the start, regardless of how it's progressing, not making any changes. We're very big within our team, and I believe other teams within Marshall White, in making sure that we discuss every one of our properties in our Monday morning sales meeting, and various other whips that we have during the week. How's this property progressing? How many buyers do we have on it? What do we need to do? So we have like an action checklist that we can do in any instance where a property is perhaps not tracking the way we want it to. So if we're not meeting our KPIs around number of people coming to the open for inspections, if we're not getting repeat inspections, if the inquiry is not what it should be, or if the internet statistics are not what they should be, what are we going to do about it? And so we could add an additional open for inspection. So do a second open for inspection on a Saturday. We could add a twilight open for inspection on a Thursday. We could organise for an e-brochure to be sent around, post the initial listing.
You could pick up the phone and ring 4 or 5 other agents and say, hey, this is struggling a little bit.
That's right.
What do you think we need to do?
Yeah, that's right. Send an e-brochure around the office and try to encourage the rest of the team to perhaps re-refer people that they've referred in the past who perhaps haven't been through the property yet. So just definitely not set and forget. Change the copy. Maybe the copy's attracting the wrong buyer. Change the order of the photos. It might be a different hero. A hero shot needs to be. Sometimes photos need to be retaken. But I think the main thing is the vendor needs to know that you're doing something pretty much every day to progress their sale. If you're not, and you're not telling them what you're doing, they will make an assumption you're not doing anything to get their home sold.
Absolutely. So all of this allows you to maintain and build even greater trust, even greater rapport in the process, and it all ends up the client knowing, like you said up front, that their property is a priority.
That's right.
In your world, and that really that you're on their side to help them achieve the best result possible.
A lot of agents make the mistake of, if a campaign's not tracking well, they retreat and they drop the communication because they think, I've got nothing to tell them today, or gosh, I've got to tell them that we've lost that buyer, or we've got no interest. And so rather than getting on the front foot and saying, okay, what can I do to make a difference to the campaign, they retreat and they reduce communication, which only makes it worse. It's then a downhill spiral. So the vendor says, well, I haven't heard from my agent for a couple of days, nothing must be happening. So you're always better off, even though that's sometimes the hardest phone call to make or the hardest meeting to have. I think they respect you more for the fact that you've had the guts to do it. We had a situation a couple of weeks ago where we pushed an auction out a week just to try to generate some more traction. And I think the vendor, they can't blame us for that. All they can say is they're trying. They're doing something to try and progress my campaign. So keep the communication up. You've got to continue that trust. If you lose trust, you might as well, you're gone. The sale's pretty much gone. Yeah.
So you know my saying, no news is not good news.
That's right.
So you've still got to increase that communication well and truly.
That's right.
You mentioned buyers before. Anything around buyer feedback, getting either agreement from the client or making sure that you're giving them that open and honest feedback as to what's happening in the marketplace.
So I always ask permission in that pre-campaign meeting. Are you okay if I'm completely transparent with you around feedback around your home? So low sensitivity radar, no sugarcoating. Are you okay with that, or would you prefer me to sugarcoat? And you make a little bit of a joke of it, and they generally will say, no, we'd prefer you to tell us. And I'll also say there's no such thing as a perfect home. I've never sold one. It doesn't matter whether it's $1 million or $5 million. Every home has its pros and cons. So I think you get permission first of all. If you don't get permission, you could offend. So get permission up front, and that's what that pre-campaign meeting is all about. Great pre-frame. And then the notes that we leave after the open for inspections will have feedback, positives and concerns. More positives than concerns, because you got to think that the vendor's gone to a hell of a lot of trouble getting their home ready for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, and at the first open for inspection they have to have some compliments around the amazing job they've done.
Absolutely.
Some agents come in too hard at the start and just give them all the negative feedback, and then you can often get them offside for that. So get permission first.
Now, we talked around the auction side of things on the private treaty. Similar process?
Similar process, although I guess depending on the situation of the client, some clients are not in any major hurry. That's why they've chosen private treaty as a method. So I think you've got to measure each particular property depending on the urgency and the motivation of the vendor. There would be, for example, probably no point if it was, a situation where the vendor said, look, we're probably going to sell next year, but if you've got a buyer, more than happy for you to bring them through between now and Christmas. You would probably be barking up the wrong tree a little bit, ringing them every day. That would probably annoy them.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, you've just got to measure it, and also
So it's more an off-market kind of
but
process.
again, you would manage their expectations around that and say to them, look, I'll be in contact every week with an update. And again, it's just, no. If they know what to expect, then they're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
If they have different expectations, then that's bound to end in disappointment.
Yeah, great. So this is all about expectations. It's all about frequency of communication. It's about quality pre-framing, and then making sure you're demonstrating progress, that the client always feels you're on their side, building trust, building support in the process, well and truly.
Yeah, and never let a client think that you're on the buyer's side. Again, if you do that, it's like the losing trust. You might as well kiss the sale goodbye.
Yeah.
The vendor has to understand that we need rapport with the buyer in order to progress the sale and get a sale, to close. But they always must know that you are on their side.
Yeah, great, Madeline. Excellent insights into the vendor management process.
Thanks,
really appreciate
Mike.
it.
Thank you.